computer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Aspects of Energy. I'm Elaine Brewster, and so happy to have you here today with our special guest, Dr. Rachel Winston. Rachel lives in Southern California, and I have to tell you just a little bit about her. She graduated from, I guess it was high school when she's 13, graduated from university when she was 17. She has probably at least one PhD, not sure how many, but I do know that she writes more prolifically than I do. Last year, she wrote 5 books with an average of 350 pages per book. And she has been a math teacher for 30 years, but somewhere along the line has sort of transitioned to learning all about China. So I am wondering how you made that transition, and also from reading in the newspapers this week that President Biden is suggesting the companies not work in Hong Kong. So we want to know what's happening in Hong Kong, but we want to know what's happening with you.
Okay, so I'll start from the beginning. I was a college mathematics professor for 35 years, and I retired. And when I retired, I said, there's so much going on in the world that I just wasn't aware about because I was so immersed in my teaching and committee work and college that I just didn't have the time to get involved with all of these issues. It was just, some of the issues were really complicated and I just didn't know. And yet I was a person who really longed to understand what was happening. So I retired and I went to the I went to Harvard University, and I started there. And then I went to the University of Chicago. I graduated from Harvard University, graduated from the University of Chicago in international relations and then liberal arts. And then I went to Cal State Dominguez Hills and studied negotiation, conflict resolution, and peace building in order to understand the big picture of what was happening in the world. So over that time, I wrote papers and I wrote 3 different theses, and they were on the South China Sea, what was happening in the South China Sea, what was happening in China, what was happening in Taiwan. So I started writing about these different issues and getting immersed in topics, and that's how I started writing books, because there was so much that people needed to know. And when I began writing the books, I wrote Raging Waters in the South China Sea first, because I was fascinated with how the Philippines, how they were handling the relationship between China and the United States. And I called it hedging, like this idea that the Philippines needs to hedge between the United States and China because China's in their backyard. The United States is far away. And even if they wanted to work with the United States, they still have to work with China. China offers them lots of money, and yet China has been encroaching on their islands and taking islands one by one away from the Philippines. And even this year, China's boats hovered around Whitsun Reef, threatening to take yet another island. So when you have an aggressive state like that, what does a country do? It's so easy for us in the United States to go, oh, well, it's really easy. You know, the United States can help them. But actually, China's there. China has the money, and China is threatening them consistently. Nobody wants a war. I mean, the last thing the Philippines wants is some big war to like blow up their cities. So how does the Philippines make good decisions? It's even more intriguing because the president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, is like a lightning rod individual. So his personality adds to this mix. But whether it was him or someone else, they still have to deal with that problem. So that was my situation with getting involved with these issues. And then it expanded. I realized that China wasn't just taking islands from from the Philippines or Vietnam, or threatening the oil drilling from Malaysia or Indonesia. They were all throughout the South China Sea. But after that, last year during the pandemic, what happened? China went in and into Hong Kong and threatened Hong Kong, created this national security law that was not only imprisoned people and silenced people and surveilled people in Hong Kong, but they started, they closed down, China closed down newspapers, and they threatened people, put them in jail. And so Hong Kong became a flashpoint for the possibility of what would happen in other places as China's military came in to take over. And the national security law is kind of interesting when you read it. It says that we don't care if the person is in Hong Kong or in China, even if they go away, we can get them from another country. So it actually impacts people whether they're there or they're in another location. So now fast forward to today, July 16th, President Biden issued a warning from the Treasury Department, State Department, Commerce Department, and Homeland Security, saying that businesses that engaged in activities in Hong Kong were threatened, and that they would be threatened both economically and legally. Now, it's big when a president says something of that magnitude. First, you can imagine Xi Jinping is not going to be thrilled with whatever Biden says today. And they don't, obviously, China does not want people to not come to Hong Kong. Hong Kong has enough problems, with the economic chaos with the pandemic. They want people to come and work in Hong Kong. And now the president of the United States says, abandon projects in Hong Kong because it could be dangerous to your life. They've taken Americans and put them in jail. It's so bad that there aren't correspondents there, because the correspondents for Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and the BBC, they are all threatened, and some of them have been put in jail. So there are correspondents in different news agencies that are now in Chinese jails because of what they've said.
I have a question. I have a neighbor that just lives 2 streets up from me, and he's the president of a company called Juva, Juuva, and the other co-president is Chinese. This man is gone from his house. I can't even tell you how many months out of the year, because he's gone to China. And the reason is because they deal with energy products, much like the company Nikken, with energy products, magnetic, negative ion, things like that. And the Chinese people just understand it far better than Americans do. So their company is growing, I believe, much greater in China. Because he has a fellow, Chinese president, does that keep him out of danger a little bit more? Can you answer that?
Yeah, no, I can answer that. I mean, obviously it's complicated is the best answer, but the truth is that there are some Chinese who are very aware of what is happening, and they too are in danger. There are other Chinese that are actually working with the Chinese government. So it's very possible, I mean, I don't know, that this person is working with the Chinese government. The Chinese obviously want to keep as many businesses in China to do the work that they do. So it's in China's best interest. the one thing that's important, whether the person is working with the Chinese government for these contracts or whether they're not, they're trying to stay away from these kinds of issues, is that you have to make sure if you are working in China that you don't diss China. You don't say anything negative against China, Xi Jinping, the country at all. But once you do, we can see from the NBA when they were threatened after the tweets that were against the Chinese government. Once you do something that's against the government, you are likely to be held accountable. They want to make sure that their reputation is kept positive, and so they don't want anybody saying anything negative about their government system, the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay. Here's another question. I know it's a big deal because people on both sides of the political spectrum have called for the boycott of the 2022 Beijing Olympics. What's the backstory on that?
So here's the backstory. There are 180 human rights groups have called for the boycott of the 2022 Olympics. Both left and right have political spectrum in the United States have called for the political boycott, which means not to boycott, not to have the athletes not go, but to not promote going to the Olympics for 2022. It's in February, right? So I don't know. We don't know yet how this will be impacted. There are lots of countries who have also called for the political boycott of the 2022 Olympics. It's possible that if there is any more aggression or intrusion or threats, there are people who are U.S. citizens, Canadian citizens, who have been put in prison, and like Michael Spavak and Michael Spieber, I think it is. The two the two Canadians, they've been in prison for years in China. And one thing you don't want to be is in a Chinese prison. It's not like an American prison. You're talking about 10 people in a room and peeing on the floor and getting gruel for food. This isn't like, there's a negotiation for, fair living arrangements, right? So you do not want to be in a Chinese prison. And so where this is if the United States promotes people going to Beijing for the Olympics, and those people are put in prison, they're likely to face some very serious consequences just by saying something negative against China.
Can we talk about the culture? Do you know, in your writing and your research, do you know a little bit about the culture and how different that is than our American culture, North America, Canada, how we are forthright and we're pretty open and pretty progressive, one foot after another, just moving forward. What's their culture like?
So I've spoken at schools and programs around China. So I've done a lot of traveling in China. I don't believe that I can go back to China because I would probably be put in prison. So so that option is not available to me anymore. But I used to. I actually enjoyed going to schools in China. Their culture is very different, particularly with respect to education, because they're very strong. They're very purposeful. They ensure that the children get the best education. There's a lot of competition in their education because they have 1.4 billion people in their country. Now, just to get a picture of that, we have about 330 million. So, I mean, we're talking about almost 4 times as many people in China. So when you have that many people all competing for these kinds of jobs, the best students who take the Gaokao, that's their qualifying test, get into the best schools. And now, one of my students who's Chinese, they said on the Gaokao this year, the question was, one of the questions was about loyalty to China. So they wanted to ensure that anyone who took the Gaokao and was going to be going to the university was loyal to the country. This is very important because nationalism is big in China. So as far as the greater culture, I mean, if you go to China, if you went to Shanghai, you would find one of the most beautiful cities you have ever seen in your life. I mean, it's colorful. The river is beautiful. The walkways are magnificent. People are out. People are happy. It is actually, next to Disneyland. It's really beautiful. Beijing doesn't have the same feeling, but other cities like Guangzhou and Shenzhen, they're just Hong Kong for sure. Sparkling, glittering, big skyscrapers, really magnificent. So if you went, you would probably get this fantastic vision of a country that has made significant progress. Like you said, with the company of your friends, they have technology and they have people who are hardworking. They're not afraid of putting in 12, 14-hour days as a matter of course. This is what they do. And because you have a country that is full of citizens that want to make their country better, they have a lot of pride for their country. So they believe that they have a good system. They don't see it as a bad system. The people there don't think that they're being intruded upon, despite the fact that there's a billion, close to a billion cameras taking pictures of them everywhere, watching them on their cell phones at all times. They do not see that kind of surveillance as being intrusive or bothersome. Yet they collect data on everything for all the people. When you go into China, you actually have your fingerprinted. They go through extensive measures to track you from the moment you're there to the moment you leave. And so you're not going to escape their eyes going in or going out. Honestly, I never felt threatened. And I love the people that I worked with. I love the people that I coordinated things with. I met students that I absolutely love. The only problem is there's like this underlying challenge. And that is that in places like Xinjiang province, in the far side of China, they have hundreds of concentration camps. And they are all too happy to take you and put you in some facility anywhere in China and keep you there in prison. And they don't have to have cause, and they can keep you for as long as they like, and they do not have to give you a lawyer. So, and even if they do, they don't have rule of law in the way we have rule of law. So that kind of the answer to your culture question is, as long as you keep your head down and you do the things you need to do, you work very hard for long hours, and you commit yourself to the country, you are in good shape. On the other hand, it's against the American way of thought to have a cell phone that literally tracks whether you're good or bad today. They have a social credit system where they give you credit for doing good things and take away credit for doing bad things. So you can literally, if you get on the bad side of the social credit system, they may not let you take a train, take a bus, or get out of the country. You don't get a visa, you will not leave. So you must do what they want you to do. You must do what they require for all good Chinese citizens. We don't live that way, so we don't really understand that kind of culture. And I am actually not adverse to China doing what China does. It's socialist culture. I'm not against that. What I am against is China imposing that culture on us, because we don't live that way and we don't want to live that way.
How many people do you think are in the higher echelons that create those requirements? For instance, in Russia, Russian was the first language I learned. I learned it when I was 10. And it was interesting because they never talked ever about the culture. They never talked about the people. But just in learning the language, I somehow innately understood that these were good people, and that the problems in the Cold War, this was during the Cold War, and the problems that we were having were from this really small group of people at the very top that were then creating the problems for the whole country. You know, how many people do we have in the top of China echelon? Do we know?
Yes. So actually, if you are a member of the Chinese Communist Party, and there are millions of members of the Chinese Communist Party, the upper echelon is a whole string of leadership positions that lead you from one small area to the next higher position. You continue to move up. So if you go to their grand assembly, it's bigger than our Congress. So they have a lot of people who make these decisions. But I suggest that what really happens is the decisions are made by a very small group of people, disseminated through a wide group of people, and then everybody rubber stamps, this is what we're going to do. And they follow their orders. They follow orders. We live in the United States. I mean, if I'm going to order you to do something, I mean, we don't take orders. We are in an individualistic society, not a collectivist society. So in our individualistic society, you can see, like, even with the pandemic, I mean, nobody wants to follow orders, right? I'm not saying it's right that you should follow orders or not, but in the United States, we don't live in that culture. But in China, they do. Like, you will follow those orders or you will be punished. You will not get to the next place. It's like, getting money in Monopoly. And they do follow orders. Here, if we want to change our job tomorrow, we can. There you don't. 1.4 billion people, you get what you get. You do a good job, you can move on. It's not, again, the system is not a bad system. The people actually adapted to it. It's not our system. And the reason why I've written so many books on this topic. So far I've written Belts and Roads Under Beijing's Thumb, Diplomacy with Chinese Characteristics, China's Power Grab and Expanding Claims, Raging Waters in the South China Sea. So I've written these different books. And in every one of these books, it's really just to inform Americans. Like, do you want to live in this kind of culture, or you not want to live in this culture? If you live in this culture and you want to obey orders and you want someone from the top to tell you exactly what you're going to do, where you're going to go, and what you're going to have, that's fine. If you want that, then you need to know that the more we move toward that kind of system, the more we will internalize and we will embrace those kinds of values. But we don't have those values now. So don't be surprised if those values are going to come to you where you could be imprisoned with no cause, where there is no rule of law, where there is no free press. The free press is gone. There is no free press in China, right? Even Apple Daily, a newspaper that had been in China for a long time, not only was forced to close, but the leaders, all the leadership in the newspaper were imprisoned. Right? This is the if we want to have no free press, if we want to have no freedom of speech, then and we get this tiered meritocratic system, but but we don't. We embrace liberalism. Whether we're on the right or the left, we have a liberal way of thinking, and we are open. We want to have all people have a chance for to go anywhere we want, but that's not true there.
So can you tell us what the situation is with the slave labor?
Yes. So, so China has hundreds of concentration camps. Now, I want you to be really clear. They look just like Nazi Germany concentration camps. I think I actually put a picture of one of them on the front of this book, the book Nazi Germany to Xinjiang, China. It looks just like a Nazi concentration camp. So they have built, and you can see surveillance, satellite photos of these. So I remember when I was a child and my family went to the Munich Olympics in 1972. When I was there, and I went to different concentration camps, I saw this image of a concentration camp at a young age, and I was like, wow, you know, it says never again on Dachau. I believed it was never again, like there would never be another concentration camp. And yet there are hundreds of concentration camps. And what do they do there? China says we're re-educating the people. We are torturing them, and we're shaving their heads, and we're taking their organs, and we are making them comply. We are teaching them how to be good Chinese by re-educating them. They've forced sterilization. Like, the things that they do are incredible to more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims and other people, Kazakhs and other people that are there. So there are more than 1 million people that are in these concentration camps. And I just can't be here today and live in this world at this time and think that that's okay. And this is one of the reasons why today, July 16th, President Biden said, beware if you are going to set up a business in China. Beware that there are economic and legal consequences. Beware that someone's going to watch you at all times. Beware that you may not speak like an American or you will be imprisoned. Beware that when you buy any products that come from China, these products are made by slave labor. And this is back to the 2022 Beijing Olympics. That human rights groups said this is unconscionable and cannot happen. And this drove me to work on writing these books, and I write incessantly now.
Yeah. You write really fast.
I write a lot. I do a lot of research.
You do. Well, the news frequently discusses Taiwan. So should we be concerned with that?
So here's a situation with Taiwan. China has this rule or idea of called one country, two principles. So they are committed to having Taiwan be part of China, and they will stop at nothing to have Taiwan be part of China. But Taiwan is an independent country, and they have independent-minded people. In my mind, I've been to Taiwan. I can't imagine that the Taiwanese are just going to go, yeah, sure, I want to be just like China. It would be almost the same thing as if the United States said, you know something, let's be part of China. So because of that, Taiwan, their leader, Tsai Ing-wen, she has watched Hong Kong fall. She has watched as Hong Kong's laws have put people in prison. There are no leaders who are allowed to talk about anything related to freedom in Hong Kong. I can imagine what that would be if it happened in Taiwan. So every day, China has been encroaching on Taiwan with planes, boats, and so on. So they have been threatening, swarming Taiwan and threatening Taiwan. The United States has done some in trying to sell military equipment to Taiwan without actually saying we're support of Taiwan. Other countries also have shown support, but tacit support of Taiwan as well. So I believe that it is inevitable that China will keep its promise to put Taiwan under its umbrella. It'll keep its promise. It promised it will do that, even if it meant a war. So what does that mean? It means that there is a threat in the East China Sea that is very large. It also means that we need to kind of watch what's happening. I do not believe that China will take Taiwan before the Beijing Olympics. It's bad form. Can you imagine? There's a war and then Beijing goes, oh yeah, please, I welcome you to come to Beijing. Like I see China threatening Taiwan, but I do not see China taking Taiwan. So let's back up in history. At the 1936 Berlin Olympics, Hitler threw a big show. And after his big show, he took over lands throughout Europe. It didn't happen in the same way beforehand, but he felt like he had gained this power and ability to be able to do that after the Berlin Olympics. Fast forward. For the Sochi Olympics for Russia, Putin did not take over part of the Ukraine, Crimea, did not go into Sochi to take that area until after the Olympics. And just after the Olympics, Putin made his move. Now, 2022, I believe that Xi Jinping is going to throw a big show, his big, show for the 2022 Beijing Olympics. And just after the Olympics, then we should be worried. I do not see that happening beforehand. So for the next 6-7 months, probably everything will be relatively calm. Not really, because countries all over the planet are going to consider boycotting the Olympics. There will be press, whether China wants the press or not. There will be press that is related to human rights, slave labor, imprisoning people for no cause, no rule of law, aggression in the South China Sea. The media will jump on a lot of these topics. But just after the big show of the 2022 Beijing Olympics, I would not be surprised if China made its move and attempted to take over Taiwan. It's really hard to say that China won't take over Taiwan. I said attempted, but what I actually mean is that Taiwan is really small. China is really big. If China wants to do whatever it wants to Taiwan, it can. There's a quote that I have in one of my books that I really like. I don't remember who said it. This guy said that Taiwan trying to fight against China to preserve its independence and integrity is like an ant shaking the trunk of a tree. I mean, it's like an ant shaking the trunk of a tree. I have great hope that the fierce and independent country of Taiwan, I know I'm not supposed to say that it's a country because China says it's not a country, it's part of China, but the country of Taiwan, that I can't imagine that without a larger presence or some other bigger force, that China won't just take Taiwan. So what does that mean for the United States? It means that the United States helps or not. They don't have to, because we don't have the same kind of treaties, but we can provide military. But remember, Taiwan is like an ant, and they're like a trunk of a tree. Now, Japan, they're not going to willingly jump into a war, but if China encroaches on Japan at the same time it's taking over Taiwan, that's a different story, because Japan is worried because Taiwan is really close. And we should be worried because we do have a mutual defense treaty with Japan. So that means that if Japan jumps into the dominoes of World War I and World War II, what happened, right? If Japan jumps into war, then we are obligated to support Japan, right? So it's likely to be huge, depending on how China plays its chess pieces and how they strike. But the moment China strikes Japan, then dominoes start to fall.
So, so what about all of the naval force that China has that's out, in the ocean right now?
So this is really interesting. If you read China's reports, they say they only have X number of ships. Right now, they're building another carrier that is supposed to be bigger and better. They have an underground submarine facility so that the satellites can't see where they park them. They park them underneath, I believe it's Hainan Island. So, and that's, okay, the big part of this is that China has a huge paramilitary force. They don't call them military, and we don't call them military. So we kind of like to say that America has a bigger Navy. Okay, we have a bigger formal Navy. We have a bigger official Navy, but they have a way bigger Marine force than we do, because they have a paramilitary force. All of their fishing boats are like small ships, armed, and they have thousands of them. We don't count them as part of their Navy. China doesn't count them either. They're part of their paramilitary. And it's not like we couldn't take out one or, take out some of these ships. They're smaller, I get it. On the other hand, there are thousands of them. So it is a danger. Not just that they're fishing in all over the planet, literally now, all over the planet. It's that they are parked everywhere around the planet in case anything comes up. And I think that's where Americans are really unaware of the bigness of the problems that are likely to face them. And we're not communicating effectively. We're talking about, Biden's talked about there are threats, but if you ask the layperson on the street, they don't know what those threats are. They really don't know how that war is possible, right? I mean, China said, I will take Taiwan. They are threatening the Senkaku Islands in Japan. It is very possible that this could happen. And yet most people, if you said war, we're not going to war, they would be completely dumbfounded, because I don't think they understand the magnitude of the problem.
So, big question then, what can North Americans do about it? Is there?
I think the first thing is to just be more aware, to read more and understand more. Nobody wants to have a war. Nobody wants to send their kids to a war. War is awful. I'm studying right now, I'm getting my 8th master's degree in World War II history. I watch enough film about World War II. I would never want to wish a war on anyone. And yet, if we don't understand what is happening, that we're actually the ones who are feeding the hungry giant. Our clothes are made in China. Our hair extensions, these are not, this is actually my hair, but our hair extensions are actually from imprisoned people in China. We are, and just if you want to just understand that part, go on Google 13 tons of human hair, New York Port Authority, and you will see that 13 tons of human hair. Imagine how many people you would have, how many heads you'd have to shave to have 13 tons of human hair. So what we have to do is we have to first be more informed. Second, find other ways to get your food, to get your clothing. We don't have to have all of our clothing come from China. The third thing, I mean, I understand that American businesses want to buy low, sell high, right? I can make this shirt in China for $5. Why would I want to make it in the United States for $20 or for $15? Of course, it makes absolute business sense for all businesses to want to do, to have their products made in China because they're cheap and they can make more money on them. 100%. So I completely understand the businesses in the United States are in bed with having slave labor produce their clothing and their products. Cell phones, look, Apple, right? We're not talking about just anyone. We're talking about these companies and brand names that we know and use. So what does that mean? We have to have enough of a force that says, no, you cannot have those things made there. Yes. Okay, so let me go back for a second. Slave labor means there is no pay for the labor, right? So if I hire you, Elaine, to make a shirt, you're going to charge me for your time. But if it's a slave, there is no charge for that time. So of course, any American business is going to get a better price because it's just cheaper. And certain things like solar panels are made in Xinjiang province, right? So it's very dangerous work. I really not, I really don't know the details of it, but I gather that the work is very dangerous. And yet these people who are free labor can make solar panels at a price that we couldn't possibly make in the United States. There are lots of things that we as Americans build a company in order to make these products with slave labor. We as Americans need to say, no, we're not feeding the hungry giant that is likely to take over Taiwan, possibly Japan, certainly the islands of the Philippines, and possibly drive us into war. So we have to understand what's happening, and we have to divorce our businesses from feeding China with all of the money that it's using to buy up countries all over the planet.
Thank you. You know, because after talking with you, I went shopping with an almost 15-year-old granddaughter, and we were at maybe TJ Maxx, and I picked up something that said made in China. And so I started telling her some of those things that you had said. And, you know, her eyes went up to the ceiling because she didn't know about this at all. We put that item back, and I felt really happy that I was helping to now encourage a new generation to look at things differently than maybe how things have been looked at before. So I really appreciate those ideas. Those kinds of ideas raise our energy because then we feel that we can do something about it, even though it might be really small. Well, and Hattie Jane had a question. How are they supporting as individuals their personal health? Is that something that you're aware of at all?
Ask me that again.
Their personal health. What are they doing to encourage supporting health?
So, um, so you're talking about health, right? So they had a lockdown too, a few lockdowns, right? Although they don't publish any of their health data, they say we only had a few thousand because we're good. We don't have coronavirus in China. It never impacted us. Our data shows that we had about maybe a few thousand cases for our whole 1.4 billion. You see the big bad United States, look at how bad they are. They had all of these cases, you know. So you really want to be part of China because we are healthier. Actually, they have millions of cases, right? And they wouldn't close down an entire city of 6 or 7 million people to test everybody just because 3 people got coronavirus. I mean, literally, their propaganda said, we have a couple of people, like 3 or 4 people who got coronavirus, so we're going to lock down the city. Look, they locked down the city because people were dying, and they needed to figure this out. So, and that's just one city, and they have lots of cities. Their cities are huge. So, so health-wise, they've got other health problems that are besides the coronavirus situation, and that is because they have coal plants all over their country, and their cancer rates are really extraordinarily high. They have pollutants that they poured into the rivers because they didn't have like protections on their rivers. They don't have an EPA that says, oh, well, you can't put anything in the river. Their rivers used to be rivers that you could swim in. And now their rivers are dark. They are not, you can't swim in their rivers, and they would not swim in their rivers either. So people are getting cancer from a lot of different sources. So their health situation is problematic. I think a lot of people who are wealthier, certainly the middle class or higher in China, are aware or more aware that they should drink bottled water, that they should be much more conscious of where they eat their food and what they do. So, but there are a lot of poor people who don't have access to drinking water or clean drinking water or air, right? So health is a big problem in China, and I think that the country is going to have to think more radically with respect to environmental problems. We have the world, I mean, maybe European Union more than other places, has been pushing, environmental awareness, and now, more with the United States, with the new administration, more environmental solutions for our world. Except for the coal, and I don't think China is going to stop their coal plants because they don't have to have fewer coal plants until 2030, but I think they actually will be much more conscious of environmental causes or problems if more of their people are dying from these kinds of diseases that are preventable if they can clean up their environment. So I think they're becoming much more aware of environmental consciousness. Though I think they're less concerned with the millions that are in poverty that mean less to the overall scheme of things there. So they'll probably put more coal plants in places that have much poorer people. The people in the big cities are not, they don't have a choice, but I think they'll use their voice to like not have coal plants too close to cities. So I think health is a big problem. I think that they're going to be much more conscious about it and much more willing to work bilaterally with different kinds of different countries and different groups on the environmental issue as with time, as the problems increase.
Okay, here's another question from someone. With all that you know, are you talking with Kamala and Biden?
So that's a really good question. I actually did apply for a position in which I would have that opportunity to be in Washington, to have that voice. And I was not offered that position. And I given the fact that I probably have more education than any of the other applicants, I think that one of the problems, I mean, there could have been a few of them, but one of them is that I write on issues that maybe the administration is not as keen to be attached to. I am my books are visual. So if you pick up Raging Waters in the South China Sea or China's Power Grab and Explaining Claims, if you open the book, it's in color and there are pictures. So there are images, there are maps. I mean, it's for the layperson. So I think if they got copies of the books and they were aware of maybe my commitment to inform people, maybe I was less desirable. I'm not sure that I wouldn't try again to be an advisor. I did work with President Reagan a long time ago, and I did work on Capitol Hill as well. So I am aware of what of how Washington works. So I do believe that I would be a great person to be an advisor. So I'm not going to put that out of the realm of possibility, but it's not going to stop me. I'm going to train because I'm going to make sure that people become aware of these issues, whether they satisfy an administration's political agenda or not, because I'm not a left or right. I am a person who just wants people to be aware.
Right. Well, you have made us more aware. You have made a dent. I really, really appreciate it. I put there in the chat, Dr. Rachel Winston, find her books on Amazon. Pat says, may I suggest that you do not take no as an answer? Thank you so very much. Really appreciate
I know two nuns who are 85 and 90, and they are key people in immigration, and they have changed laws because they don't take no as an answer. They make weekly trips to the legislature in Illinois, and they are the first people to have access to the immigrants in detention centers because they would not take no. May I suggest you do the same? And I will
Yes.
fast and pray that you do.
Yeah, I do believe that there's a place for me in Washington, D.C. I don't have a desire to run for political office, but I do have a desire to be an advisor. So I am hoping that the next step on my journey is to be an advisor to the president. Until then, I'm going to read 24/7 and write as much as I can and research everything. And while I'm not, I was a college professor for 35 years, but while I'm not currently affiliated with a university, I don't feel like I need to be affiliated with the university to be able to get ideas out to people. And I'll continue to do that no matter what. So I will not take no for an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, all of you. And you certainly are prepared. That's the main thing, so that you feel like you can go out and forge ahead. Thank you so much. And I will get this posted, everyone. Go and find someone and smile at them and make their day, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Rachel.